For centuries, humanity believed that every great mystery on Earth had already been discovered. We mapped the highest mountains, we explored the deepest oceans, we sent machines beyond our planet, but there was still one place that remained almost untouched. One place where the Earth had hidden its secrets beneath a wall of ice. Antarctica, the frozen continent, a place where temperatures could drop below -80 degrees, where storms could erase entire camps overnight, and where beneath several miles of ice existed a world that no human had ever seen, until now. In the year 2037, a mysterious signal was detected deep beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. At first, scientists believed it was a technical error, a malfunction from one of the satellites orbiting above the continent. But when 3 different countries analyzed the data, they discovered something impossible. Something was moving beneath the ice, not shifting ice, not underground water, something alive.
The discovery shocked the scientific community. The signal came from an unexplored region known as the Vostok Rift, an area that had remained untouched for millions of years. According to satellite scans, beneath nearly 4 kilometers of solid ice was a massive underground chamber, the size of a small country. But the strangest part was not the size, it was the movement. Every few days, something inside the chamber changed position, slowly, almost carefully, as if something enormous was waking up. Dr. Michael Carter had spent 30 years studying ancient ice. He had uncovered frozen forests, preserved microorganisms, and evidence that Antarctica had once been a green continent filled with life. But nothing prepared him for the data in front of him. He stared at the holographic map inside the research facility. A giant underground structure appeared beneath the ice, a dark empty space surrounded by unknown energy readings. "This can't be natural," he whispered.
Across the room, Dr. Elena Vasquez, a paleobiologist from Spain, looked at the information. "Maybe it's a hidden ecosystem," she suggested. Michael shook his head. An ecosystem doesn't move. Silence filled the room. Everyone understood what that meant. Something was down there. A month later, the international expedition Aurora 9 arrived in Antarctica. The team consisted of some of the greatest scientists on Earth. Dr. Michael Carter, expedition leader and glaciologist. Dr. Elena Vasquez, expert in prehistoric life. Dr. Thomas Reed, geologist specializing in ancient environments. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, biologist and genetic researcher. And Marcus Hale, engineer responsible for the drilling operation. Their mission was simple: reach the underground chamber, collect data, return. Nobody expected to discover anything alive. The first days passed normally. The team built a research station surrounded by endless white nothingness. There were no trees, no animals, no signs of life.
Only ice and silence. But everyone felt something strange about the place, like Antarctica itself was hiding something. On the 4th night, Marcus Hale woke up to a strange sound, a deep vibration, almost impossible to hear, but he felt it. A low rumble traveling through the ice beneath the camp. He stepped outside. The storm had stopped. The entire continent was silent. Then it happened again. Boom! A distant impact. Boom! Another one. Marcus looked down at the ice. The sound was coming from below. The next morning he told the team. Most people believed it was natural movement, ice cracking, pressure changes, underground activity. But Dr. Thomas Reed did not look convinced. "I heard it too," he admitted. Everyone became quiet. "Last night?" Thomas nodded. 3 times. Michael looked toward the frozen ground. For the first time, he wondered if the expedition had come too close to something that was never meant to be found. The drilling operation began. The machine was one of the most advanced pieces of technology ever created for polar exploration. It could cut through kilometers of ice while maintaining a stable tunnel. The first kilometer was easy, the second kilometer was harder. Then, at a depth of 3 kilometers, something strange happened. The temperature began rising. -40 degrees, -20, -5, then 0. The team stared at the monitors. Beneath thousands of meters of frozen ice was a warm environment. Impossible! How can there be heat down there? Yuki asked. Nobody answered, because everyone was thinking the same thing. Something was producing it. After 9 days of drilling, the machine reached the chamber. The entire team gathered around the main screen. The first camera was lowered into the darkness. For several minutes there was nothing, only black water. Then the camera lights revealed something that made every scientist stop breathing. A forest, deep beneath Antarctica, a real forest. Ancient trees covered in strange glowing moss, a river flowing through a hidden underground valley, plants that had survived for millions of years without seeing sunlight. Elena whispered, "This isn't a cave." She stepped closer to the screen. "This is another world." The camera moved deeper. The underground ecosystem continued for miles. Unknown creatures moved through the shadows. Small animals, strange insects, life that had evolved completely separated from the surface world. Then suddenly, the camera shook. A massive wave moved through the underground lake. The image became distorted. "What happened?" Michael asked. The operator checked the controls. Something passed near the camera. Everyone looked at the screen. A shadow moved beneath the water. A very large shadow. The size was impossible. The shape was unfamiliar. It disappeared before anyone could identify it. But everyone saw one thing. It was alive. The team lowered another camera. This time they reached the bottom of the chamber. The image showed enormous footprints. Not fossils, not ancient remains, fresh tracks. Something had walked there recently. Elena studied the screen. The tracks were unlike anything known on Earth. 4 massive toes, deep marks in the ground. Each footprint was almost 2 meters wide. Marcus slowly stepped away from the monitor. "That's not an animal." Michael looked at him. "What do you mean?" Marcus swallowed. "Animals don't leave footprints like that." That night the entire expedition was awake. Nobody wanted to sleep. The discovery was too impossible. Then, at exactly 3:17 a.m., every alarm in the station activated. The ground began shaking. The seismic monitors turned on automatically. Everyone rushed to the control room. The graph appeared on the screen. The movement wasn't random. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a pattern, a rhythm, a step, another step, another. Something massive was moving beneath them, coming closer. Michael stared at the screen. His face slowly changed, because he understood something terrifying. The creature wasn't sleeping anymore. It knew they were there. The next morning, the team discovered something outside the station. The snow around the drilling site had changed. There were new marks, huge marks, the same footprints they had seen underground, but now they were on the surface, leading away from the hole, not toward it, away. The creature had escaped. The scientists followed the trail for several hundred meters, then they stopped, because in the middle of the endless Antarctic desert they saw something standing in the snowstorm, a shape larger than any living creature they had ever imagined. Tall, massive, covered in dark ice-covered armor, 2 enormous tusks curved from its skull. Its eyes glowed with a strange golden light. It looked ancient, powerful, almost intelligent. The creature watched them, and for a moment the humans and the beast simply stared at each other. Then the giant released a sound that shook the ice beneath their feet. It was not a roar of anger, it was a warning, a message, a reminder that humanity was no longer alone. Dr. Michael Carter lowered his binoculars. His voice was barely a whisper. "We didn't discover something hidden beneath Antarctica." He looked at the enormous creature disappearing into the storm. "We woke it up." The world above the ice remained silent, but beneath Antarctica, something ancient had begun to move. For millions of years, the creature had slept in darkness, protected by layers of frozen stone and forgotten time. Now, for the first time in human history, it had seen mankind, and mankind had seen it. The members of the Aurora 9 expedition returned to the research station without saying a word. Nobody knew what to say. How could they explain what they had witnessed? A living creature larger than any known animal walking across the Antarctic ice. A creature that should have been impossible. A creature that had survived longer than humanity itself. Inside the station, Dr. Michael Carter reviewed the recordings again and again. The footage was unclear, but there was no doubt. The creature was real. The enormous body, the armored skin, the glowing eyes, the intelligence in its expression. It was not a mindless beast. It had looked at them. It had studied them. "It knew we were there before we saw it," Elena said quietly. Michael looked at her. "What are you saying?" She pointed at the screen. "Look at its behavior. It didn't attack. It didn't run. It approached us." She paused. "It was curious." Nobody liked that answer, because if the creature was intelligent, then the biggest question was not whether it was dangerous, the question was, what did it want? The next morning the team prepared a second descent. Some members disagreed. Marcus Hale was against it. "We already know enough," he argued. "We found something impossible. We should leave." Michael looked at the underground scans. "No." Marcus frowned. "No? We cannot walk away from this. If this creature exists, the world needs to understand it." Elena nodded. "And if there are more of them?" The room became silent, because nobody had considered that possibility until now. The drilling tunnel was reinforced and the expedition descended once again.
This time they carried more equipment, more cameras, more sensors, and more fear. The deeper they went, the stranger the environment became. The temperature increased. The walls became covered with unfamiliar crystals. Some of them emitted a soft blue glow. Yuki Tanaka studied one of the samples. "This isn't normal ice." Michael looked at her. "What do you mean?" She carefully examined the crystal. "The structure is different. It contains minerals I have never seen naturally formed." Thomas looked around the tunnel. "Whatever created this place," he paused, "wasn't ordinary." When the team reached the underground world, they realized something had changed. The forest was no longer empty. There were signs of movement everywhere. Large branches had been broken. The ground was disturbed. Something had passed through recently, something enormous. Marcus looked at the tracks. "It's following us." Everyone stopped. The realization spread through the group. The creature wasn't hiding.
It was watching. They continued deeper into the underground valley. After several hours, they discovered something unexpected. Structures, not natural formations, buildings, or at least what remained of them. Ancient stone towers covered in ice stood among the trees. Their surfaces were covered with symbols. Elena approached one of the walls. She brushed away frost. Her expression changed. "These aren't random marks." Michael walked closer. "What are they?" She looked at him. "Writing." Everyone stared at the wall. A civilization had existed here, under Antarctica, millions of years ago. Inside the ruins, the team found something even more incredible. A massive chamber. At its center was a circular platform, and carved into the floor was the image of the creature they had seen, the Guardian. But it was not alone. Hundreds of them surrounded it, living together, protecting something. "What were they protecting?" Yuki asked. Nobody answered. Until the lights from their equipment suddenly began flickering, the temperature dropped, a low vibration filled the chamber, the same sound Marcus had heard on the first night. The ground moved, slowly. Something was approaching. The team turned toward the entrance. A massive shadow appeared. Everyone froze. The Guardian stepped into the chamber. But this time, it was different. It was not a distant creature in a storm. It was standing directly in front of them, close enough that they could see every detail. Its body was covered in dark armored plates. Ice crystals grew along its back. Its tusks were larger than trees. Its eyes burned with a golden light. But there was no hatred, no aggression, only awareness. The creature looked at each human carefully. Then it focused on Elena. She slowly raised her hand, a gesture of peace. The Guardian lowered its enormous head. The entire chamber shook, but it did not attack. It was communicating. Yuki noticed something strange. The creature's body reacted to the ancient crystals around them. The glowing minerals became brighter whenever the Guardian moved. "The crystals are connected to it," she said. Michael looked confused. "What does that mean?" "I don't know." She looked at the creature. "But I think they are part of the same system." The Guardian moved toward the wall. Then it touched the ancient symbols with one claw. The chamber changed. The walls began glowing. Images appeared, like memories. The scientists watched in silence. They saw Antarctica millions of years ago. But it wasn't frozen. It was a green paradise. Massive forests covered the land. Strange creatures walked across the plains. And among them were the Guardians. The creatures were not predators, they were protectors. They lived alongside another species, humans, but not modern humans, an ancient civilization, a civilization that understood the creatures, a civilization that disappeared. The image suddenly changed.
The beautiful world became dark, the sky turned red, the ground split apart, something else appeared, something terrifying. A creature larger than the Guardians, black armored skin, sharp claws, red glowing eyes, a monster born for destruction. The ancient humans and Guardians fought together, but they were losing. The images showed cities falling, forests burning, the world dying. Then the ancient civilization made a final decision. They created the ice. They froze the entire continent. They trapped the enemy beneath the ground. But one Guardian remained awake, waiting, watching, protecting the prison. The vision disappeared. The chamber became silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Finally, Thomas whispered. The creature wasn't hiding from us. Michael looked at the Guardian. No, he understood now. It was protecting us. Suddenly, the entire underground world shook violently. The Guardian turned towards the darkness. For the first time, fear appeared in its eyes. Not fear for itself, fear for something else. The creature released a deep warning sound. The crystals around them changed from blue to red. Yuki checked the sensors. Her face became pale. Something is moving. Michael looked at the readings. How many? She didn't answer immediately. Then she whispered, "Thousands." Far below them, beneath millions of tons of ice, something ancient opened its eyes. Not one creature, not one monster, an army. The Guardian stepped between the humans and the darkness. It had spent millions of years waiting for this moment. The enemy had returned, and this time it was not alone. The ancient chamber was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that comes before a storm. The expedition team stood frozen, staring at the glowing red crystals around them. Thousands. That was what Dr. Yuki Tanaka had said. Thousands of creatures were moving beneath the ice. For millions of years, humanity believed Antarctica was an empty, frozen desert. But beneath their feet existed an entire forgotten world. A world that had been waiting. And now it was waking up. The Guardian stood at the entrance of the chamber. The enormous creature that the scientists once believed was a monster now looked different. It was no longer a threat. It was a soldier, the last soldier of an ancient war. Dr. Michael Carter slowly approached the creature. "We need to understand what happened here." The Guardian watched him. Then it turned toward the center of the chamber. The giant crystal began glowing. A wave of blue light spread across the walls. The ancient memories returned.
But this time, they showed something nobody expected. The beginning. Millions of years ago, Antarctica was not a frozen wasteland. It was a continent filled with forests, rivers, and enormous life. The Guardians ruled the ancient wilderness. They were called by many names throughout history. The Stone Giants, the Ice Titans, the Keepers of the Earth. They were not animals. They were something far more advanced. They understood the planet. They could sense changes in nature. They could communicate with each other across thousands of miles. And they protected the balance of life. But they were not the only ancient creatures on Earth. Deep beneath the planet's surface existed another species, a species that evolved differently. The scientists watched the crystal memories unfold. They saw creatures crawling through underground tunnels, creatures built for survival. They had no need for sunlight, no need for forests. They adapted to darkness. They became stronger, faster, more aggressive. They were called the Void Beasts. Unlike the Guardians, they did not protect life, they consumed it. Where they traveled, forests died, rivers became poisoned, entire ecosystems disappeared. They were not hunters, they were destruction itself. The first war between the Guardians and the Void Beasts lasted centuries. The ancient world became a battlefield. The scientists watched impossible scenes, titans fighting beneath ancient skies, mountains collapsing from their battles, oceans rising, continents changing. The Earth itself was damaged by the conflict. The ancient humans who lived alongside the Guardians understood that the war could not continue. If it did, the planet would die. So they created a final plan. They would not destroy the Void Beasts. They would imprison them forever. The ancient civilization discovered the power of the crystals. They were not ordinary minerals. They were connected to Earth's energy.
The crystals could control temperature, create barriers, and preserve life. Using this technology, the ancient humans began the impossible. They froze an entire continent. Antarctica became a prison, a massive frozen tomb. The void beasts were buried beneath kilometers of ice, but someone had to stay behind. Someone had to guard the prison. The guardians volunteered. One by one, they entered the frozen chambers, until only one remained, the last guardian, the creature standing before the scientists. Elena watched the memory in silence, her eyes filled with disbelief. All this time, she looked at the giant creature. It was alone. Michael nodded. For millions of years, this creature had walked through an empty world, watching, waiting, knowing that if it failed, everything would end. Suddenly, the vision changed. The scientists saw something terrifying. The ancient seal was not broken by time. It was broken by humans. The drilling, the machines, the search for hidden resources.
Human curiosity had damaged the prison. Michael looked away. Nobody spoke, because they all understood. They had not discovered the secret, they had opened the door. A violent explosion shook the underground world. The chamber walls cracked, dust and ice fell from the ceiling. The Guardian immediately turned toward the sound. It released a powerful roar. But this time the roar was different. It was a warning, a challenge, a declaration of war. The expedition rushed back toward the surface, but the underground world was changing. The creatures were emerging. Small void beasts moved through the tunnels. They were not as large as the Guardian, but they were fast and intelligent. They hunted as a group. The scientists realized something terrifying. The giant monsters were not the greatest danger. The greatest danger was their intelligence. During their escape, the team entered a massive underground canyon. The bridge ahead had collapsed. They were trapped. Behind them came the sound of claws scraping against stone. The void beasts were approaching. Then the ground shook. The Guardian arrived. The giant creature stepped between the humans and the approaching predators. For the first time, the scientists saw the true power of the Ice Titan. It moved faster than something that size should be able to move. Its enormous claws struck the ground. The shockwave threw the creatures backward. The battle echoed through the underground world. But there were too many. The Guardian defeated one, then another, then 5 more appeared. The creatures kept coming. The scientists watched helplessly. The last Guardian was fighting the same battle it had fought millions of years ago, alone, again. Then Elena noticed something. The crystals, they were reacting to human presence. The ancient civilization had not created them only for the Guardians. They had created them for cooperation. Humans and Guardians together. The same alliance that existed millions of years ago. She ran toward the nearest crystal. "Michael!" He turned. "The Guardian cannot win alone!" "What are you saying?" She placed her hand on the glowing surface. "We have to help it!" The entire chamber exploded with blue light. The crystals throughout Antarctica activated, one by one. Thousands of kilometers of frozen land began glowing beneath the surface. The Guardian stopped fighting. It looked at the humans, and for the first time in millions of years, it was not alone. But deep beneath the continent, something much larger moved. The void beasts had awakened their leader, a creature older than the mountains, bigger than anything the scientists had ever imagined. The ice cracked, the underground oceans began boiling. And from the darkness came a sound that shook the entire continent. The Guardian slowly raised its head. It knew that sound. The sound of the creature that had nearly destroyed the world millions of years ago. The final enemy had returned, and this time, Earth had no ancient civilization to save it. Only a few scientists and the last Ice Titan. The Antarctic continent was changing. For millions of years, the ice had remained untouched, silent, frozen, a perfect prison. But now cracks spread across the surface like scars on the planet itself. Deep beneath the ice, an ancient war had begun again, and this time humanity was standing in the middle of it. The Aurora 9 team returned to the surface, but what they found terrified them. The research station was damaged, the snow around the base had split open, their equipment was failing, and across the horizon, strange blue lights moved beneath the ice. The crystals were activating everywhere. Antarctica itself was waking up. Dr. Michael Carter looked at the readings. This is spreading. Yuki checked the data. The entire continent is connected. Michael looked confused. Connected to what? She slowly raised her eyes. The Guardian. The Ice Titan stood several hundred meters away from the station. For the first time, the scientists could truly understand its size.
It was not simply a large animal, it was a living mountain. Its footsteps created earthquakes, its breath created storms, its body carried millions of years of history, but now it was wounded. The battle beneath the ice had damaged its armor, dark cracks covered its body. The creature that had protected Earth for millions of years was reaching its limit. Elena studied the Guardian's injuries. The crystals are healing it, she said. Michael looked at her. Then why isn't it recovering? She looked toward the underground readings. Because it is using its energy to maintain the seal. Everyone became silent. The truth was terrifying. The Guardian was not only fighting, it was holding back the entire army beneath them. Every second, every moment, it was sacrificing itself. Then the ground exploded. A massive column of ice shot into the sky. Something had broken through. The scientists watched in horror as a creature emerged from the frozen earth.
It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The Void Beast leader, the ancient enemy of the Guardians. Its body was covered in black armor-like plates. Its claws were long enough to cut through solid rock. Its eyes burned with a deep red glow. It looked at the surface world for the first time in millions of years, and it smiled. The creature released a roar. The sound traveled across Antarctica. Satellites thousands of kilometers above the Earth detected the vibration. Around the world, scientists watched their screens. Something had awakened. Something impossible. Governments demanded answers, but nobody had them, because the truth was too unbelievable. Beneath the frozen continent, a war older than humanity had restarted. The Guardian moved forward. The two ancient giants faced each other, the last protector and the destroyer. Millions of years ago they had fought the same battle. Now history was repeating itself. The Void Beast attacked first. It moved with shocking speed. Its claws struck the Guardian's armor. The impact created a wave of ice and snow. The Guardian pushed forward. Its massive tusks hit the enemy's chest. For a moment it looked like the Protector had the advantage, but then hundreds of smaller Void Beasts emerged from beneath the ice. The scientists realized the truth. The leader was never alone. It had brought an army. "We can't just watch," Marcus said. Michael looked at him. "What do you suggest?" Marcus pointed towards the ancient temple. "The crystals." Everyone understood. The ancient humans had used them before. Maybe they could use them again. But there was a problem. The temple was kilometers beneath the ice, and the pass was collapsing. The team prepared for the impossible mission. While the Guardian fought above them, the scientists descended back into the underground world. This time they were not explorers, they were soldiers. The tunnels were no longer empty, the Void Beasts had spread everywhere. The team moved quietly through the darkness. Every sound could attract them, every mistake could be their last. Inside the ancient temple, they discovered something unexpected, a hidden chamber, one that had never appeared in the memories. At the center was another crystal, but this one was different. It was not blue, it was white, pure, almost glowing like a small star. Elena approached it carefully. There were symbols carved around it. She translated them. Her expression changed. "What does it say?" Michael asked. She looked at the words. "It says..." She hesitated. The Guardians were never meant to fight alone. The chamber activated, a final memory appeared. The ancient humans had known the Guardians would eventually fail, so they created a final defense, not a weapon, a connection. The crystal could combine human intelligence with Guardian strength, but it required trust, a partnership, something that had been lost for millions of years. The team returned to the surface carrying the crystal, but they arrived too late. The battle was almost over. The Void Beast leader had defeated the Guardian. The Ice Titan was on the ground. The ancient Protector was dying. The enemy raised its claws for the final strike. Then Michael stepped forward, holding the crystal. The entire battlefield stopped. The void beast looked at him, a tiny human standing against an ancient monster. The creature laughed, a deep sound like falling mountains, but Michael did not move. "We made a mistake once," he looked at the Guardian. "We woke you up." Then he raised the crystal. "But we won't let you fight alone." The crystal activated. A beam of white light shot into the sky. The entire Antarctic continent responded. Every ancient crystal beneath the ice began glowing. The Guardian opened its eyes. For the first time, its golden eyes were brighter than before. The wounds on its body began healing, but something else happened. The scientists felt something, a connection. They could feel the Guardian, its memories, its pain, its loneliness. Millions of years of waiting, millions of years protecting a world that forgot it existed. The Guardian slowly stood. The Void Beast leader stepped backward. For the first time, it was afraid, because the last Guardian was no longer alone. Humanity had joined the fight. The battle that followed became the greatest event in Earth's hidden history. The Guardian and the humans fought together. The crystals created shields of energy. The ancient Titan moved like a force of nature. The scientists used their technology to guide the crystal network. Slowly, the Void Beast army began falling, one by one. They returned beneath the ice, but the leader refused. It fought until the end. The final battle shook the continent. The Guardian and the Void Beast leader crashed through mountains of ice. The sky turned dark. The ocean waves rose. The earth itself seemed to hold its breath. Finally, both creatures stood at the edge of a massive ice canyon. The Void Beast prepared its final attack. The Guardian looked toward the humans, a silent message, a goodbye. Elena understood. No. She realized what it planned. The Guardian was going to sacrifice itself, again. But this time humanity refused to let history repeat. The scientists activated the white crystal, not to destroy, to heal. The energy surrounded both ancient creatures. The Void Beast screamed. Its destructive energy began disappearing. The ancient hatred that had lasted millions of years began fading. The creature that was born only to destroy finally became still. The war was over. When the light disappeared, Antarctica became silent again. The Void Beast was gone. The army was sealed, and the Guardian remained, weak but alive. Weeks later, the world received a message, not an official announcement, not a scientific report. Just a simple statement from the surviving expedition. We were not the first intelligent life on Earth, and we were never alone. But deep beneath Antarctica, the crystals continued glowing. Because the scientists discovered something hidden in the final memory, a warning. The Void Beasts were not the only ancient creatures beneath the ice, they were only the first. And somewhere deeper, something even older was waiting.
For the first time in millions of years, Antarctica was silent. Not the empty silence of a frozen wasteland, a different kind of silence, the silence that comes after a storm. The ancient war beneath the ice had ended, the Void Beasts were gone. The cracks across the continent had stopped spreading, the storms had disappeared. But the world above the ice had changed forever, because humanity had learned the truth. Earth had secrets far older than mankind, and one of those secrets had been protecting them all along. 3 weeks after the battle, the Aurora 9 survivors remained at the Antarctic Research Station. The world demanded answers, governments wanted information, scientists wanted proof, but Dr. Michael Carter refused to release everything. Not yet, because some discoveries were too powerful to share before they were understood. The world was not ready to know that beneath Antarctica existed an ancient civilization, a civilization that disappeared before human history began. A civilization that fought monsters and left behind a guardian. Elena spent most of her time studying the Ice Titan, but she no longer studied it like a scientist studying an animal. She studied it like a historian studying a lost civilization. Because that was what it was. The Guardian had memories, it had emotions, it had experienced loneliness. For millions of years it had stood alone beneath the ice, knowing that nobody would ever remember its sacrifice. Until humans arrived.
until the moment when someone finally understood. The connection between the humans and the Guardian grew stronger. Through the crystal network, they discovered they could communicate, not with words, with memories. The Guardian showed them things no human had ever seen: the first forests of Antarctica, the ancient oceans, the creatures that ruled Earth before mankind existed. It showed them the birth of mountains, the movement of continents, the slow transformation of the planet. The Guardian had witnessed everything. It was not just a creature from the past, it was a living memory of Earth itself. But one question remained: why did the Guardian stay? Why did it sacrifice millions of years of its life to protect a species that did not even know it existed? The answer surprised them. It was not because humans were special, it was because all life was special. The ancient Guardians did not protect humans, they protected existence itself. Every tree, every animal, every ocean, every future generation. The Guardian had never protected a species, it protected a world. Months passed. The official explanation for the Antarctic events was simple: a chain reaction of underground geological activity, an unexplained natural phenomenon. The public accepted the story, most people forgot, but a small group of scientists knew the truth. They knew something impossible was still alive beneath the ice. 1 year later, Elena returned to the underground temple. She traveled alone, not because she was brave, but because she needed answers. The ancient crystal chamber was still active, the walls still carried memories, but this time something was different. A new symbol had appeared, one that had not been there before. Elena approached the wall, the crystal activated, a new message appeared, not from the past, from the Guardian. The message showed Antarctica millions of years into the future, the ice melting, the oceans rising, the planet changing. The Guardian knew this day would come. The ice would not last forever, the prison would eventually weaken. Not because of humans, not because of war, but because time itself could defeat anything, even ancient technology, even the strongest creatures. Elena understood. The battle was never truly over, it had only been delayed. The Earth would always face threats, new threats, different threats, and the Guardian could not fight forever. It needed successors, not more creatures, not another ancient race. Humans. The final message appeared, only a few words, but they changed everything. Protect what you inherit. Elena stood silently in the chamber. The Guardian was not asking humanity to save it, it was asking humanity to continue its mission. Years later, the Antarctic discovery became one of the greatest mysteries in human history. Officially, nothing unusual had happened, but secretly, a new scientific organization was created. Its purpose was not to hunt ancient creatures, not to control them, not to use them. Its purpose was to protect the balance of Earth. The organization was called the Guardian Project. Deep beneath Antarctica, the ice titan returned to its resting place. The ancient forests remained hidden, the crystals continued glowing, and the last Guardian watched, waiting, not sleeping, waiting. Because now it knew something it had forgotten long ago. Hope. Decades passed, human technology advanced, new worlds were discovered. New planets were explored, but Earth remained the greatest mystery of all, because beneath its surface were stories older than humanity, stories of creatures that walked before us, stories of civilizations that vanished, stories of battles that shaped the planet itself. One winter night, long after the original expedition had ended, a young scientist working at the Guardian Project noticed something unusual, a signal deep beneath Antarctica. She checked the readings again. The signal was weak, but clear. Not an emergency, not a warning, a message. She activated the communication system. For several minutes there was only silence. Then a familiar golden symbol appeared on the screen, the symbol of the Ice Titan. The scientist smiled because she understood. The Guardian was still there, still watching, still protecting. But then another signal appeared, a second one, from deeper beneath the ice, much deeper. The screen displayed an unknown energy source, something that had never been detected before. The scientist stared at the data, her smile disappeared. Because the signal was not coming from the old prison, it was coming from below it, from a place even the ancient Guardians feared, a place untouched for millions of years. She whispered, "There was something else down there."
Far beneath Antarctica, in the darkness where no human light had ever reached, something opened its eyes. Something older than the Ice Titan, older than the ancient civilization, older than the war. And as the ice trembled for the first time in decades, a deep voice echoed through the underground world. Not a roar, not a warning, a promise. The age of ice is ending. The last guardian lifted its head, the golden light returned to its eyes. The earth had been quiet, but it would not remain quiet forever, because every secret eventually wakes, and beneath Antarctica, the next one had just begun.